Generally speaking, we like to think of video game heroes as fundamentally good people. Stepping into the shoes of a protagonist certainly helps us see things through their eyes. And when a typical day's work involves saving a life, preventing an apocalypse, or apprehending criminals, the word hero naturally begins to enter the mix. However, some of our beloved video game heroes are actually far less morally pure than we like to think. Though morality can be a relative concept, there are certain acts and behaviours that are universally considered to be bad. However, this is often forgotten where video games are concerned, and in many cases, it seems that saving the world is an excuse for general unpleasantness. In fact, there are some so-called heroes whose misdeeds far outweigh any actual altruistic actions, and so for our list today, we're here to judge them as we see fit. With that in mind, it's time to get out your torches and pitchforks, because I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 gaming heroes who are actually awful people. Number 10. Sonic the Hedgehog series. Is it fair to hold hedgehogs to the same moral standards as humans? Generally speaking, no, but Sonic the Hedgehog is a little different. He talks, he runs, and he shares interspecies kisses with human women, so we're not gonna let him off the hook for his reprehensible behaviour. Though Sonic is presented as the hero of the franchise, pitted as he is against the evil Dr. Robotnik, he's actually a pretty unpleasant guy. For starters, he's incredibly arrogant, frequently reminding everyone just how fast he is. This arrogance extends to the treatment of his sidekicks, and while he's not actively awful to them, he's certainly not a very good friend. More importantly, he's also canonically guilty of a horrifically manipulative act. In Sonic CD, if players leave the iconic blue hedgehog unattended for 3 minutes, he literally jumps off screen to his death, resulting in an instant game over. Tapping his watch and impatiently declaring, "I'm out of here," is one thing, but an instant game over as punishment for keeping him waiting makes Sonic seem like the ultimate diva. Though he may have engaged in various heroic acts over the years, Sonic always seems to talk down to those around him, and it makes him seem like a very obnoxious dude. Number 9. The Assassin's Creed series. The premise of the Assassin's Creed series franchise is both incredibly convoluted and remarkably simple at the same time. There's an ancient war raging between two secret societies known as the Assassins and the Templars. The games have given the player control over various assassins over the years, with the white-robed parkour experts depicted as the heroes against the villainous Templars. However, on closer examination, the assassins aren't really as heroic as the games portray them. The Templars' general goal is to control the population in order to keep the peace, while the assassins believe in free will. So far, so good. Except that is, for one key detail. The assassins will kill anyone who opposes them. While no one is going to argue that mass manipulation of the population is a good thing, the assassins believe the only way to stop the Templars is by leaving hundreds of corpses in their wake. And that really doesn't make them any better, does it? For all their flashy parkour and stylishly conspicuous fashion sense, we really want to believe the assassins are good. Unfortunately though, it's hard to claim the moral high ground when you're covered in blood. The assassins' body count alone is enough to rob them of their hero status, if only because they truly believe the ends justify the means. Number 8. Geralt of Rivia, The Witcher series. The Witcher's Geralt of Rivia makes for an interesting case study in morality, because although he doesn't probably consider himself a hero, the general consensus is that he saves enough lives to be considered one. It's no secret that Geralt has done some pretty questionable things, but he still risks life and limb to save countless ungrateful peasants, so he must be a decent person, right? Well, no. Geralt is unapologetically rude and unpleasant to most people, and rarely acts if it doesn't directly benefit him to do so. He's not above leaving innocents to die for the simple crime of being too poor or too ignorant, and he only occasionally considers the moral implications of his work and responsibilities to the world at large. What's more, he's also quite happy to play cards and engage in shirtless fistfights while the world falls apart around him. It's worth noting that Geralt's indifference to society in general is fueled by their prejudice towards witchers, but a real hero wouldn't let pettiness get in the way of what's right. Though it may be tough to stomach, Geralt's multiple transgressions and overall demeanour mean that he's far from being the hero that many players consider him to be. Number 7. The Pokemon Trainers, the Pokemon series. The world of Pokemon is a uniquely charming and colourful one, but if you think about its goings-on just for a moment, you'll realise the horrific moral implications of its society. Much of Pokemon's world revolves around the titular creatures, small sentient life forms who each possess varied abilities and skills. Most games in the franchise have the player taking control of a Pokemon trainer, tasking them with catching and training as many of the creatures as possible. In and of itself, that doesn't sound too bad, does it? However, when you examine the vocation just a little more closely, the terrible truth becomes all too clear. The trainers are essentially imprisoning animals in tiny balls and only letting them out to fight on command. The fact the entire world seems to revolve around Pokemon training and battling actually makes it worse, because it means the games exist in a world of sociopathic animal abusers. Pokemon are shown to feel pain and have their own individual needs and desires, so forcing them into indentured servitude only to have them fight for entertainment is about the cruelest thing anyone could do to these poor creatures. The more you think about it, the darker it gets, proving that Pokemon's heroes are actually morally bankrupt. Number 6. Batman, the Arkham series. As the Arkham series of games are considered one of the most accurate and comprehensive adaptations of Batman, it seems a fair assumption that they make old Brucey Dubs seem appropriately heroic, doesn't it? Well, that's certainly true at a glance, as he engages in various acts of gadget-fueled vigilantism. That said, there are actually a number of ways in which Batman's in-game approach to crime fighting makes him a particularly awful human being. Batman Arkham Asylum sees the caped crusader infiltrating the titular mental health facility in order to quell a large-scale riot that has seen the inmates break free and spread across Arkham Island. Removing criminals from the streets might be a relatively noble act, but the first game in the franchise has Batman facing off against these criminals in the very place they're supposed to be recovering. Presumably they were sent there after being found mentally ill in a court of law, and that makes Batman's actions in both Arkham Asylum and Arkham City especially troubling. Batman's no-kill rule means he doesn't fatally injure his mentally ill victims, but he's more than happy to dish out concussions and broken bones with extreme prejudice. Being a billionaire crime fighter was already morally iffy, but Batman's brutal treatment of the mentally ill makes him especially reprehensible. Number 5. John Marston, Red Dead Redemption. The moral complexities of society are one of Red Dead Redemption's core ideas, so it's only fitting that the game's protagonist be appropriately ethically challenged. John Marston first appears in Red Dead Redemption after being approached by government officials who enlist the former criminal-turned-rancher to hunt down one of his old bandit buddies. The adventure that follows sees John question the nature of his life and his place within a rapidly changing world. As much as Red Dead Redemption makes it easy to see John Marston as a roguish but ultimately good man, caught out by the spread of modernization, this really isn't the case. John is very good at making excuses for his criminal past and his countless misdeeds, but for all his moral preaching, he's still a criminal at heart. The game sees him engaging in countless murders and an array of illicit activities, with John all the while trying to assert what a decent man he's trying to be. Deep down, John Marston remains an outlaw, and that's essentially what lies at the heart of Red Dead Redemption. It becomes clear that there's no longer a place in the world for Marston's lawless ilk, subtly proving that the game's hero was actually just another awful human being all along. Number 4. Joel, The Last of Us. The Last of Us is another game with a deep and difficult moral quandary at its core, but it's the game's protagonist, Joel, that we really need to look at. The game opens with society crumbling in the wake of a killer fungus, with the ensuing panic resulting in the tragic death of Joel's daughter. Jumping ahead a number of years, a cynical and hardened Joel is tasked with transporting a teenage girl named Ellie across the country. Though the bond that Joel and Ellie build is central to the game, he's actually initially very unpleasant towards her. He treats her as glorified cargo, acting cold and aloof despite the fact that she's done nothing to deserve his ire. By the time the game's ending rolls around, Joel has completed a 180 so jarring that it could give you whiplash. And not only has he come to care for Ellie, but is willing to effectively doom humanity and murder a room full of scientists to protect her. Of course, saving Ellie's life doesn't make Joel a bad person, and the choice he's forced to make is a heartbreaking one. However, his initial resistance to show even a modicum of warmth in the wake of an actual apocalypse is perhaps his greatest crime, along with, the scientist murder, and it's one that makes him undeserving of his heroic reputation. Number 3. Deacon St. John, Days Gone. We're turning our attention from one zombie apocalypse to another now, as we look at Days Gone, a game that casts the player in the role of perpetually oil-stained biker dude, Deacon St. John. Accustomed to life on the road, Deacon is largely unfazed by the fall of society, and continues to carve out a life scavenging and trading with other survivors. The story of Days Gone sees him learn to find strength in others, and though he does engage in some general heroics, he's actually a pretty terrible person, all things considered. It's revealed during the game that Deacon's role in a motorcycle gang once saw him torturing people with a blowtorch, and that one of his horrifically burned victims survived and is out for revenge. The game glosses over Deacon's terrible crime, and instead paints his victim as the villain ahead of a showdown in which Deacon finally kills the man without a hint of remorse. He even goes as far as telling him to get over it, which just about sums up what sort of man Deacon St. John really is. Living in a zombie-ravaged wasteland can't be easy, and Days Gone asserts that only the strong survive. However, Deacon seems to confuse callousness with strength, and that's essentially what makes him such an appalling guy. Number 2, Alex Mercer, Prototype. Prototype's Alex Mercer starts out with convenient amnesia and mysterious powers. This allows the game to take players on a journey to uncover the truth about the shady Gen-Tech organization and the virus that threatens to claim all of New York's population. It also means that Prototype can handily conceal Mercer's true nature from the player, allowing us to hold on to the illusion that he's on a heroic crusade for the truth. As Prototype plays out, Mercer kills an increasingly alarming amount of people in pursuit of his lost memories. Slowly but surely he recovers them, only to learn that he's responsible for every single unpleasant thing that's been happening around him. It turns out that not only did Mercer create the virus that's destroying the city, but he was the one that released it among the general population. Definitely not hero behaviour. Just to really hammer the point home, Prototype 2 made Alex Mercer the villain, definitively proving that he was never the hero at all. Though, the trail of infected corpses probably should have tipped us off earlier. Mercer doesn't see himself as the villain, and that's how Prototype tricked us into thinking he was the hero. And number 1, Kratos, the God of War series. When you're the playable character in a franchise named God of War, it should probably be a given that you're going to do some pretty violent things. This much is undeniably true for Kratos, but what's strange is just how easy it is to forget what a dreadful person he really is. Fueled by some arguably justified rage though he may be, Kratos is perhaps the most brutal and bloodthirsty character ever to grace a video game. He's unperturbed by the slaughter of gods and mortals alike, and has zero patience for anything that doesn't involve separating people from their waking lives. He's also responsible for killing countless families, including his own, effectively rendering any potential heroism a sort of moral moot point. 2018's God of War saw Kratos undergo a significant personality shift, but even through his remorse, it's clear that he's the same angry barbarian he once was. His redemption arc is admittedly a satisfying one, but the simple fact is that he can never undo the countless horrific acts he once performed. Ultimately, weighing up Kratos' brutal and bloody past against his later redemption still sees him land squarely in the red, and overall, he remains a pretty nasty guy.